my goodness. Oh my goodness, Bear. Oh, you should have seen what happened out in the lab. Oh my goodness. We were trying to make slime. There's so many orders we're getting for boys and girls that want slime this Christmas, and oh my, what a mess that stuff is to make. Oh my goodness. Oh, Bear. Oh goodness, I can't see anything. Oh, that's better. Oh my goodness. Oh, and you want a story. You want the next chapter, don't you? Oh, where's my book? Where did I put my book? Oh goodness. Oh, there, I see it. There we go. I found it. Oh, and you even had it open to chapter 4 for me, huh? Okay. Well, let's see how we do with chapter 4. Chapter 4. The Trapped Elf. Okay, here we go. Oh, goodness. Oh. Dust everywhere. Oh, my. All right. Oh, okay, here we go. Acorn was hanging by a thread, and somewhere nearby in the darkness was some slithery, awful thing. What had found him?
Well, who's there? Said the creepy voice from the dark. I can hear your heartbeat. Sounds like a scared mouse. Or maybe you're a weasel trying to steal away a free dinner.
I'm not a weasel or a mouse, shouted Acorn. He was surprised at his own outburst, but when you've been called things like weasel or mouse for most of your life, just because you're small, you can get rather sensitive about such things.
Ah, so it's a talking weasel or a mouse, is it?
I'm not some rodent, exclaimed Acorn, and I'll thank you not to call me one.
Oh, so it's a weasel you must be then, said the voice.
Just because I'm not a mouse doesn't make me a weasel, Acorn argued back. He was starting to get pretty riled up at this point. If you were hanging by a thread under a bridge in the freezing cold, you might start getting pretty riled up too. Especially if someone kept calling you a weasel.
Well, your heart sounds like it belongs to a weasel or a mouse. You must be a rat then.
The creepy voice sounded almost triumphant at solving the riddle. I am not either! Acorn was now getting pretty upset. First mouse or weasel, and now rat. During this conversation, Acorn had been digging through his sack, looking for something that might help. He needed to get down from where he was hanging and away from this creepy thing that thought he was some animal. And I suppose you're a snake, Acorn threw back at the voice.
I suppose you're a snake,
the voice repeated back in a snarky tone.
I ain't no lizard, said the voice.
Didn't say you were. Lizards have legs. I said you were a snake.
I do too have legs,
argued the voice from the dark. Acorn still hadn't laid eyes on the creature that was arguing with him, and he wasn't sure he wanted to. Reaching around in his bag, he finally found his knife again. He thought about cutting the thread that he was hanging from, but he couldn't see much below him. He didn't want to drop into some freezing cold water or mud. He put the knife back in his pack and continued searching.
Bet my legs are longer than yours,
the thing argued after a long pause. Oh, so you are a lizard then, said Acorn.
Just because I'm not a snake and I have legs don't make me no lizard,
said the snarky voice. Oh, sorry. You must be a newt then, Acorn replied. Now, everyone knows that the worst thing than calling someone a snake or a lizard was calling them a newt. If Acorn had been home, Santa might have just had him wash out his mouth with soap. Certainly, he would have landed on the naughty list. Calling names is just not polite, especially one as bad as newt. "Oh, you ain't no newt!" the creature screamed as he jumped up and smacked Acorn on the bottom. Acorn felt like he'd just been spanked as he swung through the air from the blow. Wait a minute, swinging through the air? Just then, he got an idea of how to get out of the mess he was in. Acorn started swinging back and forth, further and further, while the creature kept jumping up and trying to smack him. Eventually, he hit the side of the riverbank and made a grab for some branches. Now that his feet had something to rest on, he could climb back up the riverbank. He very carefully pulled himself along his thread while placing his feet just so on the riverbank. Remember, it was very dark, so he couldn't really see where he was putting his feet. "Hey, where you going?" the creature shouted. "No fair! You can't run away now after calling me a newt!" Acorn could hear the creature scrabbling up the riverbank. It sounded like he was catching up to him when suddenly he heard, "Ah!" followed by a loud crash. The creature must have lost his grip and fallen down the riverbank. Acorn finished his climb to the top as quickly as he could in the dark. Once he was at the top, he lay down in the snow, breathing hard, trying to catch his breath. That had been too close. As he was getting up and dusting the snow off, he heard something from down below. It sounded like someone crying. Did the creature have someone else trapped down under the bridge? It sounded horrible, like a giant baby with a mouthful of mush. "Who's that crying down there? Does that awful creature have you?" The wailing only got louder. "Do you need help?" Acorn was getting more and more upset by the crying. You see, he may be a small elf, but he has a big heart, and the idea of someone down in the dark crying like that and possibly needing his help was really starting to get to him. He truly wanted to help, but he was also still worried about the voice he'd heard earlier. Oh my goodness, Bear, something's out there riling up the sled dogs. Do you think it might be Cornelius coming for a visit? "Cornelius, I'll be right with you. Just finishing a chapter with Bear in here." All right, where were we? Oh, yeah. Let's see. Fell off, climbed out, there crying, worried like a boy, started thinking maybe... Oh, yeah, here we go. Acorn was getting more and more upset by the crying. You see, he may be a small elf, but he has a big heart, and the idea of someone down in the dark crying like that, possibly needing his help, was really starting to get to him. He truly wanted to help, but also still worried about the voice he'd heard earlier. He started thinking that maybe he could stand up to that voice. You see, he was feeling much braver now that he wasn't dangling from a thread in the darkness. However, he still didn't like the idea of going back down in the dark. He needed a light. Acorn began rummaging around in his sack to see what he had that might help. He found his charcoal pencil and a nearly empty book of matches he'd thrown into his sack sometime before. Maybe the pencil could be a torch. He moved to a place out of the wind and carefully propped his pencil up so he could hold a lit match under it. Now, don't ever try lighting matches, boys and girls. Unless you're with Mom or Dad, fire can be a very dangerous thing unless you've been taught how to use it. Where were we? Oh, yes. Acorn propped his pencil up and then opened his book of matches. There were only 3 left inside. He'd have to be very careful about what he did with those matches. He grabbed a match with both hands. Remember, he's only 6 inches tall, so lighting a match is a lot more work when you are that small. Imagine a match as long as your arm. It took some work wiggling it back and forth several times to get it loose from the rest. Then Acorn tried to light it. For a normal-sized person, lighting a match is pretty easy. But moving a match the size of your arm? To strike along a strike pad in a matchbook that is as long as your leg?
fast enough to light is pretty difficult. Acorn got into position, squatting down with one foot on the cover to hold it in place. Acorn pulled the match along the strike pad, but all he got was a bit of smoke with a funny smell. He'd have to go faster. Acorn got into position again and pulled the match faster. It lit, but Acorn was moving so fast he lost his grip on the match, and it sailed into the air and down the riverbank where it fell into some snow and went out. "Oh, for goodness sake," Acorn shouted. The voice from down in the dark only started crying louder. "Don't worry, I'm coming to rescue you," he shouted down into the dark. Acorn pulled another match free from the pack and got into position once again. "Pull fast, but hang on," he told himself. He struck the match, and it lit. Holding it very carefully, he turned and held it under the charcoal pencil. It started to burn. Acorn held the match as long as he could under the pencil without burning his fingers. The pencil flared up, and he had his torch. Now to see what was happening down in the dark. Acorn moved over to the edge of the riverbank and held his torch out over the darkness. In the flickering light, he could just see a small figure curled up on the ground and crying. "Hey you! Are you okay?" A face looked up at him from below, and Acorn almost dropped his torch. It was a troll. "Oh my goodness, Bear! Now Acorn's gone and run into a troll. What's he gonna do next? I can't imagine. Well, tomorrow night I'll read you the next chapter, and now I've got to get back out to the lab before the elves blow up the rest of the place. Alright, so you need to go to bed and make sure you brush your teeth first, and you too, and I'll see you soon. Good night." Now what are you guys doing out there? No! Don't do that! Oh no! That's a bigger mouse! Oh my goodness! No!